there, we're back this afternoon with Sandra Mogelefsky from the Lynx Mortgage Bank, and we're just getting some tips for some first-time home buyers, a little education here. Hi, Sandy.
Hi, Michael.
Hey, I wanted to talk a little bit about appraisal. That comes up a lot. Again, it's a term that a first-time home buyer might not really understand.
Right.
And so when I go to make an offer on behalf of my buyer on a house, there are lots of things I have to ask them. How much money are you willing to spend for the house? How much money are you going to put down for a down payment on the house?
Right.
Those are just some of the basic questions. And, we also have to worry about the appraisal, making sure that the house appraises. Tell me a little bit about, or tell us a little bit about the appraisal process and how that affects the purchase and why the bank is so interested in the appraisal.
Sure. So, the bank's going to require an appraisal unless when they submit the loan, they get an appraisal waiver. So, once in a while, if the house is priced right, when we run it through our desktop underwriting, it'll actually give us the finding saying full appraisal waiver or drive-by. So in certain situations, we already know the house is priced right, and they're saying it's okay.
Okay.
Other times, most of the time, they'll want to go out and do a full appraisal and assess what they think the value actually is. And I guess they do that to protect themselves.
Yeah.
Because some people are putting down 3.5%, some people are putting down 5%.
Right.
5% of what? So what we go by is the appraised value. We don't go by the purchase price, the bank.
Okay. Wait, so in other words, the bank is appraising the house because the bank doesn't want to spend more money on the house than it's worth, right? It's really less about protecting the buyer, really more about the bank being in a protective situation to make sure that they're okay.
But the bank has to use an unbiased appraiser.
Right.
So it's
a third party.
Right.
Okay, got it. And the other part of the appraisal thing I want to mention is, listen, if you're an all-cash buyer, nobody cares about the appraisal. You can spend as much money as you want on that house.
Right.
Nobody cares.
Right.
It's when the bank is involved and you're getting a mortgage and the bank wants to make sure we're not overpaying for the house. So.
Right. Me as a buyer, I would want to know anyway that I'm not overpaying for a house unless I know I'm overpaying and I'm overbidding on the house.
But one of the things that, we talk about making an offer on a house is the terms. Right? So I have nothing to sell. I'm going to get a 30-year mortgage. I'm going to put down 3.5%, 10%, 20%.
Right.
And if I understand the buyer is competing for this house, I will coach them. It's not only about how much you're willing to spend for the house, but it's about the other terms, how much money you want to put down, right?
Right.
So let's make an example up here.
Okay.
If somebody's buying a house for $500,000, and they're putting down 20%, then they're going to put down $100,000 in cash, and they're going to mortgage or finance $400,000. Right? You have another buyer who's buying that house at $500,000, who's going to put down 5%, so they're putting down $25,000. So that $500,000 minus the $25,000 means they're going to mortgage $475,000, right?
Right.
So now, what the bank sends out an appraiser,
Right.
the house appraises for $450,000.
Right.
The buyer who's cash, who's putting down 20%, they're fine because the bank's only loaning them $400,000. They don't care. You're appraised.
Right.
The buyer that's putting down the 5% or $25,000 is now looking to mortgage $475,000, but the house only appraised for $450,000.
And they're going to have.
They're going to
come
be
up with
short.
Right.
$25,000.
Right, and that's where the problem arises. So if they have a lower down payment, then where are they getting the money from is going to be the question, because the bank is only going to lend based on the appraised value.
Right. So going back to the realtor side, when we're competing for an offer and multiple offers are being presented to the seller, even though there might be 3 offers at $500,000,
right,
the seller is going to be coached by their realtor to go with the client that's most likely to make it to the finish line.
Because they think it's a safer bet.
Because they won't have an appraisal issue come up. If they're putting down 20%, yeah. Right. And really, because what happens when you come up short on the appraisal is now the seller and the buyer have to get together and say, where are we coming up with that $25,000?
Right.
Right? So the buyer can say, well, I have 5 I can kick in. I can kick in 20. I can kick whatever it is.
Right. Or they could lower.
Or they might ask the seller to lower it.
Right.
But in a competitive market, that seller may move on from you to the next buyer.
Right. Well, I didn't see very many sellers' concessions during the pandemic and the outbidding. And so we weren't seeing any of that.
Right. So, from where I sit, put your best foot forward, make your best and final, your first offer, and put down every dime you can, because this is going to come up from the other point of view. I know not everybody's cash rich. you got to come with closing costs and all.
Right, you
But
have
if you
to have
have
it.
the ability to come up with more money down, you're probably helping yourself out in the long run. Plus, you'll have a lower mortgage payment anyway, right?
Yes.
So.
And if you can't, as long as you have a trustworthy loan officer that's done their due diligence and made sure they're going to qualify for the mortgage, if there isn't an appraisal issue, you should have no problems either.
Terrific.
Sandra Mogelefsky, licensed mortgage loan originator, MLO number 338049. Lynx Mortgage Bank LLC, licensed mortgage banker, New York State Department of Financial Services, NMLS number 5838, located at 143 Post Avenue, Westbury, New York, 11590, equal housing lender.